My name is Logan Pierce. If anyone ever asked me if a man can feel it when his world is about to fall apart, I'd say yes. It's not some loud warning, no bells ringing or lights flashing. It's more like a hairline crack running along a concrete foundation, quiet, slow, unnoticed, until the whole thing shatters beneath your feet. It was just another day in mid-August. The Colorado sun beat down on my construction site like someone pouring fire from the sky. I was standing in front of the concrete frame for a new project, sweat trickling down my spine, t-shirt sticking to my back. I still remember the feel of my hand on the rough surface of the freshly poured cement, cool, solid, just like I thought my life was. I built everything with these hands. My company, our house, a 15-year marriage, and 2 kids I loved more than life itself. I wasn't a man big on showing feelings, but I believed if you did things right, worked hard, stayed honest, took responsibility, your family would be as solid as the foundations I poured every day. I stood there, wiping sweat, listening to the clang of hammers on steel, the whine of saws cutting through air, and the rhythmic thumping of the air compressor, like a steady heartbeat. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. When I saw the name on the screen, Emma, a slight chill ran down my spine. Strange. Seeing her name usually felt warm. I put the phone to my ear. Emma's voice came through, soft like always, but with something stiff underneath, a little too controlled. Logan, remember we need to finalize the plans for our 15th anniversary? We talked about it, but I was thinking, maybe we should do something more special. Just the 2 of us. I looked out at the distant skyline, buildings I'd helped raise from sand and steel, then answered slowly, trying to keep things normal. I thought we agreed on going up to the cabin? Just us and the kids. Emily's been excited all week. Silence for a beat. I could hear her breathing on the line. Or maybe we could send the kids to my sister's. Give them some time on their own. And we could have some too. There was something in her voice. I couldn't name it, but I felt it. Like someone trying to say something else behind the actual words. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. The way she tried to rearrange the family plans wasn't something I'd found unusual before, but this time, it felt different. Emily already packed her bag last night, I said slowly. And Noah, he needs some time away from screens too. All 4 of us are going. Emma hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. Okay, fine. I'll pack for 4. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a long moment. Not because of what she'd said, but how she'd said it. The slight pauses. The awkwardness hidden beneath that even tone. In the service, I was trained to read situations to sense danger. And my wife suddenly felt like something I couldn't read anymore. When I got home, to our house in quiet Cherry Creek, the one I spent almost a year building myself, brick by brick, railing by railing, I saw Emma standing in the kitchen, her back to me. She was laughing. A laugh I hadn't heard in a long time. Not a polite little smile, but a real laugh, the kind you hear softly in the throat. Then she saw my truck pull up through the window. Instantly, she hung up the phone. I walked in, dropped my keys on the table. Who were you talking to? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Vanessa, she answered quickly. Talking about after the cabin trip. Vanessa. Her husband, Brent, had called me just this morning about some house repairs. And according to Brent, Vanessa was in Breckenridge. I didn't say anything, just gave a small nod, then headed upstairs. Emily was sitting there, carefully packing small items into her pink backpack. She looked up, her eyes big and dark brown, just like mine when I was a kid. Daddy, can we go fishing in the morning this time? Like last time. Absolutely. Dawn patrol. Just you and me. I ruffled her hair, then noticed a drawing on her desk. For figures, me, Emma, Noah, Emily, standing by the cabin. But there was another figure, faded, standing behind a tree. I asked, who's that other person, honey? Emily blinked, then quickly folded the paper. Oh, just scribbling, she said, avoiding my eyes. Noah's door was shut tight. I could hear the muffled sounds from his headphones. Games, shooting, yelling. I knocked. You okay in there? Yeah, just one word, Kurt. No move to come out. Noah had changed a lot lately. Quieter, more irritable, and usually siding with his mom over me. Sometimes I felt like I was losing him, but I didn't dare push. That night, I lay beside Emma. She had her back to me, scrolling on her phone. A faint smile played on her lips. When she noticed me looking, she put the phone face down and turned over. What? Nothing, I said. Just thinking. It's been a while since we went up to the cabin together. She replied absently, then turned away again. Another chill traced its way down my spine. I lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling I'd painted myself, and for the first time, I started to wonder, Did I even know the woman beside me anymore? The next morning, while loading the SUV, I saw Emma sneak off to make a call in the garage. Her voice was low, but urgent. When she came back, I pretended not to notice, but I saw how she held her phone, hand tight, eyes darting slightly. Emily stuck closer to me than usual. When Emma went upstairs to double-check things, Emily whispered, "Daddy, I don't think Mom wants to go to the cabin." "Why do you think that, sweetie?" "I heard her on the phone with someone," she said. There was a snag. I knelt down to her eye level. "Are you sure?" She nodded. Very slightly, very sadly. I didn't know what that feeling was. Like standing in front of a building I just finished, only to find out there was water in the concrete core, voids inside. I'd poured everything into this family, love, patience, and years I couldn't get back. As the car rolled out of the city, I didn't look at Emma. She didn't look at me. There was just the hum of tires on asphalt, the whir of the fan, and sometimes Emily's eyes in the rearview mirror, silent and maybe scared. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My knuckles turned white, because right then, I understood something had cracked. Not big, not obvious, but enough to know the foundation of my family, the thing I believed was the most solid, was starting to crumble beneath me. The cabin on Grand Lake had always been my family's safest space, or so I believed. It sat quiet among towering pines, backed by the mountains, facing a lake that was glass-smooth most mornings. I'd poured the foundation, fixed the roof, installed every window pane myself over 2 summers. Every flagstone on the porch, every pine board in the kitchen held my sweat and my love for Emma, for Noah, for Emily. But as my SUV turned onto the dirt road leading up, my gut didn't feel that usual peace. Noah was still glued to his phone, headphones on. I couldn't hear music. He probably just wore them to avoid talking. Emma sat beside me, glancing at her screen every few minutes, even though she knew the signal was weak here. And Emily, my quiet, observant girl, sat in the back, clutching her drawing pad, her eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. We barely spoke the whole drive. Even when we passed the sharp mountain curves where the 3 of us used to belt out that old country song years ago, back when Emma would still wrap her arms around me from the passenger seat. Now, there was only the sound of wind rushing past the windows. I felt Emma get anxious when the signal finally died completely. She checked her phone constantly. Sometimes I saw her tilt her head, as if trying to catch a signal with her eyes. I pretended not to notice. But I saw it all. "We should have gone to Cancun," Emma muttered after nearly an hour of silence. "At least they have cocktails and Wi-Fi there." I tightened my grip on the wheel slightly, then said, without looking over, "The cabin is about disconnecting. That's the point of this trip, remember?" In the mirror, I saw Emily nod almost imperceptibly. Something in her eyes made me want to pull over and just hold her for a long time. When we stopped at the nearest general store, Willow Creek General Store, Emma said she and Noah would go in for weekend supplies. I nodded. She and Noah went inside, the bell over the door jingling softly before it closed behind them. I pretended to check the fishing rods and gear in the back, but I kept an eye on the store window. I saw Noah looking at snacks, while Emma immediately picked up her phone as soon as she was past the first aisle, a flash of tension in her eyes. Then I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned. Emily stood there, twisting the hem of her shirt. "Something you want to tell me, Em?" She glanced towards the store, then lowered her voice. "I saw Mom has another phone. A smaller black one. She keeps it hidden in her toiletries bag." It felt like someone dumped ice water down my back. "Are you sure?" She nodded. No trembling, no looking away. Just the chilling certainty of a child who'd been holding a secret too long. "She only uses it when she thinks no one's looking. One time she left it in the bathroom. I saw there were some text messages, but I couldn't read them." I knelt, putting my hands on her small shoulders. "You did good, Emily. Daddy will handle the rest." She gave a tiny nod, then stepped back just as Emma and Noah came out of the store. Emma said something about forgetting cereal, but I barely heard her. My mind was racing, piecing together what I just learned. We continued the drive. Less than half an hour to the cabin now. The afternoon sun softened, filtering through the pines in broken shafts of light across the road. But inside me, things were getting darker. The cabin came into view, the familiar wooden roof, the railing I built myself, the slightly faded American flag still flying. I parked, got out, and took a deep breath. The air here was still crisp, clean, as if ignorant of lies and betrayal. I directed everyone to unload, same as always. But inside, a plan was forming. "Noah, help me check the generator and the water pump out back. Emily, you and Mom can get the beds ready inside." Emma looked at me, seeming like she wanted to object, but stayed silent. I saw her glance quickly at her suitcase, the one with the toiletries bag, before heading up the stairs. Noah and I walked around back, along the stone path I'd laid myself, walked hundreds of times. I tried to make small talk, asked about school, about math, but Noah barely answered. When I mentioned, "Everything okay between you and Mom?" he stiffened. "Mom gets me," he said. "She doesn't just harp on responsibility and discipline like you do." I swallowed hard. The words seemed casual, but they cut like a knife. I realized Emma wasn't just cheating behind my back. She was slowly pulling my son away from me too. We came back inside as dusk settled. The evening light slanted through the kitchen window, bathing the room in a soft, pale orange. But there was nothing soft inside me. While setting the table for dinner, I saw Emma check her watch at least 3 times. She couldn't hide her impatience, like she was waiting for someone to arrive or hoping someone wouldn't. "Early start for fishing tomorrow," I said, forcing some cheer. "It's tradition." Emily smiled brightly. Noah just shrugged. Emma looked at me like she wanted to say something, and stopped. As we cleared the dishes, Emily came close, whispering so quietly I could barely hear her, like she was afraid of her own words. I saw Mom hide the phone in the blue bag in the zippered compartment, but I opened it. I turned to look at her. "You shouldn't have." "I didn't read them," she said quickly. "I just saw the name. Lots of text from someone named B." I pulled her into a hug, murmuring into her hair, "You did the right thing. But from now on, let Dad handle it." That night, while everyone else went upstairs, I pretended to go outside and check the fishing gear. In reality, I circled around to the kitchen window, where I could see the light from the second floor spilling down. I stood there, a figure in the shadows, and watched Emma open her bag, take out the small black phone, and start typing. Her face wasn't tired like it was at dinner. It was bright, focused, almost happy. I stood there for a long time. The night wind whispered through the pines with a steady rhythm. I felt like I was standing between 2 worlds, one filled with the years I'd trusted, the other revealed by the light from that tiny phone. I didn't pound on the door, didn't scream. I just turned and walked back towards the garage where Emma's suitcase was. I knelt down and checked the blue bag Emily mentioned. And when my hand found the small zippered compartment, it opened without any resistance. The phone lay there, small, silent, but heavy as a stone in my palm. I knew, the moment I touched it, I wasn't the Logan from yesterday anymore. I was the man who'd just found the key to a staged betrayal, and I was no longer standing on solid concrete. But this time, I wouldn't let it crack any further. Nights at the Grand Lake cabin were usually so quiet. The wind sighed through the pines outside, a low whisper from the old forest. Inside, warm yellow lights spilled from the living room, the air still smelling faintly of the afternoon's coffee and the pine logs crackling in the fireplace. Everyone else was upstairs. I sat downstairs, alone, with the small black phone Emily had helped me find. I placed it on the table like it was something alien. No bigger than my palm, but heavier than any brick I'd ever lifted. No password. Emma hadn't thought anyone would find it, and she certainly never imagined Emily, her 9-year-old daughter, would be the one to unlock the secret. I opened the first messaging app. The latest texts were right at the top, from a contact saved as B with a heart emoji. Sent less than an hour ago. Tomorrow night is the time. He was right. Logan won't suspect a thing. I felt my eyes blink slow. My chest felt like it was filled with rocks. I scrolled down. Hundreds of messages. No hiding. No codes. No hesitation. Miss you every minute. Just 3 more days. This weekend, we tell him. Logan's still wrapped up in his company. He doesn't notice anything. I feel guilty, but whatever. I tried to keep my hands steady as I scrolled through the words. My head felt tight, every nerve straining not to smash the thing in my hand. Older messages revealed the name I'd already guessed. Brent Wallace. Emma's brother-in-law. The man who called me brother. The man who ate dinner at my table, who asked me to help fix his roof, who held Noah's hand when he first learned to ride his bike. Brent, you're the only one who understands me. Logan only knows how to build houses, not happiness. Noah will come with me. He gets it. Emily's the only obstacle. That last line made me want to smash the phone against the floor. Emily's the only obstacle. My 9-year-old daughter, who still braided her mom's hair on Sunday mornings, was the obstacle in their sordid little affair. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. All I knew was when I looked up, the clock showed it was past midnight, and I heard the floorboards creak upstairs, probably Emily turning over or Noah getting up for water. I stood, moving silently up the stairs. But instead of going to my room, I turned towards Emily's. The door was slightly ajar. Moonlight streamed through the window, falling on the small bed where she lay curled on her side, clutching an old stuffed bear, her eyes closed, long lashes fluttering with each breath. I sat down on the edge of her bed. My hand touched her hair, soft and smelling faintly of the kid's shampoo I'd bought her since she was 3. A single tear escaped the corner of my eye before I could stop it. I wasn't crying because I'd been betrayed. Not because Emma had cheated on me with Brent, someone I'd trusted. I was crying from a sense of failure. I'd spent my life trying to be the father I never had. A real man. Solid. Responsible. Working my ass off so my kids would never want for anything. And then, on a quiet night like this, I realized I hadn't protected them from the one person who was supposed to love them as much as I thought I did. I'd been too focused on work, too trusting that if I held up my end as the provider, everything else would just work out. But I was wrong. I kissed Emily's forehead, then stood and went to Noah's room. He wasn't asleep. He was sitting up in bed, the dim light from his nightstand illuminating his tired face. He looked at me like he knew something was wrong, but didn't ask. I sat beside the bed, put a hand on his shoulder. "Noah," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." He didn't say anything. Just looked at me, his expression hard to read. "Have you noticed Mom acting strange these past few months?" He shrugged. "Mom talks a lot about change, about being true to herself, that she deserves more." I nodded. "Did she ever talk about leaving?" Silence. One beat. Two. Then Noah spoke, very quietly. She said, after this trip, there'd be big changes. That things would be better if Dad would just let go. I looked into my son's eyes. I didn't see defiance or agreement, just confusion. Lost. If someone told you that Dad was rigid, difficult, didn't care about the family, would you believe them? Noah bit his lip, then shook his head. "No. But it's weird. Mom said those things a lot and I started to wonder." I gripped his shoulder gently. "Son, I'm not perfect, but I have never, and I will never, let go of this family, even if someone else already has." Noah looked down. "I'm sorry, Dad. I don't know who to believe." "I don't blame you. Just remember, I'm always here. Not for pride, but for you and Emily." I let him rest, then went back downstairs. The fire in the hearth had died down. The room was dimming. I sat again with the phone in my hand, looking one last time at the messages. Vivid proof of the breakdown I tried not to believe. One final text, sent by Emma just hours before. He was right. Logan won't know. The cabin is the perfect place. Perfect. Because I wouldn't suspect. Because I still believed it was our place of connection, our foundation of love. I didn't smash the phone. Didn't yell. I just sat there, wide-eyed, in the darkening room. The place that used to be the heart of every family vacation, and understood. This trip was Emma's goodbye. Not a 15th anniversary gift. It was a play where I was cast as the naive audience member for the first and last time. But this play wasn't going to end the way she intended. I'm a soldier, and when everything falls apart, I don't panic. I plan. Tomorrow morning, I would start rewriting this script, my way. I used to be a Marine. 3 tours. 1 in the Middle East, 2 in Africa. There's a misconception about guys like me. People think we act on instinct, react emotionally. But no, we live by strategy. Observe. Analyze. Choose your moment. And only when everything is clear, you strike. That night at the cabin, after everyone else was asleep, I sat alone on the porch. The mountain air was biting cold, cutting through my jacket, seeping into my bones. But I didn't feel cold. I was rearranging the pieces in my head, like bricks before pouring a foundation. Every detail, every one of Emma's expressions over the last 6 months, every awkward gesture, every averted gaze, it all snapped into focus now. I let my guard down. And because of that, I'd almost lost my entire family. But it wasn't too late. Around 2 a.m., I went into the small study on the cabin's ground floor. The same place I usually read or caught up on work emails. On the desk sat the metal pen Emily gave me for Father's Day and a brown leather-bound notebook. I opened it to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote 4 words in block letters, the recovery plan. I listed the objectives. First, protect the kids. Keep Emily and Noah out of whatever Emma and Brent were planning. Second, evidence. No reactions, no confrontations until I had clear, undeniable proof. Third, assets. Emma was already moving money from our joint accounts, and if I didn't act fast, she could leave me legally broke. I needed backup. And only one name came to mind, Diana Frost. Diana was former Intel. After leaving the service, she started her own private investigation firm. We'd worked together once on a pro bono case for a veteran who'd been scammed. Diana never missed a detail, and more importantly, She understood the cost of betrayal. Early the next morning, I made an excuse about needing a new propane tank from town. Emma raised an eyebrow, clearly unhappy I was leaving the cabin. But she couldn't argue openly. Noah still had his face buried in his phone, while Emily stood beside me on the porch, looking like she wanted to ask something, then stopping herself. "Hey kiddo," I said softly, "Dad will be back quick. If anything seems off, just pay attention and tell me later." "Okay." Emily nodded, her gaze strangely serious for a 9-year-old. I drove down to town, stopping at the little coffee shop with the strongest Wi-Fi in the area, a place I'd used before for work emails. I pulled out my laptop, connected, and called Diana on an encrypted link. Diana appeared on screen, hair pulled back neatly, eyes sharp as ever. "Logan Pierce. Didn't expect to hear from you on a Sunday morning. I need help. Fast," I said. "And this can't reach any third party besides you." Diana was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "Talk." I told her everything. The phone, Brent, the messages, the plan Emma intended to execute at the cabin. Diana didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said just one thing: "I'll need 12 hours. I sent her copies of the messages, photos of the cabin, bank information, and Brent's full name. Diana noted it all, then concluded, "In the next 12 hours, I'll verify 3 things. Is Brent moving money through any accounts linked to Emma? Has Emma made any legal preparations? And finally, their connection to Noah, if any." I nodded. "I don't just want to survive this," I said. "I want to win back what's rightfully mine. And I want to do it without hurting my kids more than they've already been hurt." Diana looked at me for a moment, then said quietly, "I know you won't let anyone do that. Logan, I'll be in touch tonight." I closed the laptop, feeling a fraction of the weight lift from my chest. Now, I had an ally. On the drive back to the cabin, I thought about Noah. He was still lost, pulled by his mother's words and Brent's familiar presence. I couldn't force him to trust me, but I could show him who was still standing when everything fell apart. I needed to do one thing: reconnect. That afternoon, after I returned to the cabin and parked the truck in the garage, I called Noah out to the porch. "Want to walk down to the lake with me?" I asked. "Not to fish, just walk around." Noah looked at me, hesitant. Then he nodded. We walked along the lakeshore together. The water was still as glass, reflecting the distant peaks and the pale yellow streaks of the afternoon sun. I walked slowly, letting Noah set the pace. "Remember the first fish you ever caught?" I asked. "You were shaking so hard you dropped the rod in the water." Noah let out a small chuckle. "And you jumped in after it. You were soaked all day." I smiled. Not a big smile, but a real one. And in that moment, I felt something start to crack in the cool shell my son had built around himself these past months. We sat down on a large flat rock. "Noah," I said, "I know you're confused. I know you're caught between things adults are trying to hide from you. But I don't want to lie to you. And I don't want you to have to choose sides." He didn't say anything, but his gaze softened. "I just need you to remember, whatever your mom decides, you still have the right to your own feelings. And you always have me. Right here. No conditions." We sat there until the sun dipped below the trees. And for the first time in months, Noah didn't ask to go back early. Didn't check his watch. Wasn't rushing. Late that night, I got an email from Diana. Subject line: "Initial findings confirmed. Moving to phase 2. Inside were screenshots of transfers from my and Emma's joint account to a shell corporation with Brent listed as the director. Also, a record of an appointment with a divorce attorney that Emma had scheduled before the cabin trip. This wasn't just an affair. It was a legal and financial maneuver. I read it, closed my eyes for a few seconds, then stood up. The plan was solid steel. Now it was time to reinforce it with precise countermoves. I was no longer the husband trying to save a marriage. I was the father, the builder, and I was going to rebuild my life, brick by brick. But this time, I wouldn't let anyone tear it down from the inside again. The cabin was supposed to hold our best memories. Emily learning to ride her bike on the dusty drive. The dinner where Emma burned the corn chowder, and we all pretended it was delicious. The rainy night Noah lay beside me asking about the universe and why. But that evening, the cabin wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It had become a stage. And I was the audience member who already knew the script. Before dinner, I saw Emma standing alone on the porch, phone in hand, trying to coax a signal from the dead zone. When she saw me, she quickly put it away, forcing a smile. "Just checking tomorrow's weather," she said, her eyes flicking elsewhere. I nodded. "Hope it doesn't rain." Emily's still counting on fishing at dawn. Dinner was quiet. Emily dutifully ate everything on her plate, while Noah mostly pushed his food around, occasionally glancing nervously at his mother. Emma was different. Her eyes never rested anywhere for long, flicking from the clock to the window, like she was waiting for something that hadn't arrived. When the meal ended, I made a casual suggestion. I was thinking tonight you kids could watch a movie upstairs in the loft. Big screen, popcorn, those movies you like. Emily. What do you say? Emily gave a little cheer, and Noah hesitated but finally agreed when he saw his sister's excitement. Emma didn't object. I saw the relief in her face at having the kids separated. Once the kids were upstairs, I stayed in the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of whiskey. The first one since I found out. I sat down at the table. Emma leaned against the window frame, a glass of wine in her hand. Her lips painted a soft red, not flashy, but enough to show she'd prepared for a special evening. Expecting someone? I asked, my voice as even as the lake at dawn. Emma froze, then laughed, a sound thin as air. No one. I was just thinking how peaceful it is tonight. Yeah, I said. It is a peaceful night. The silence stretched between us like a pane of glass, so taut a touch would shatter it. I looked at her. The woman I'd built a family with. The woman who'd clung to me trembling in the hospital when Noah was born. The woman who'd held my hand during our small wedding under the red maple tree. And now, the woman standing before me, trying to mask an earthquake with forced calm. I know everything, I said, setting my glass down softly. Emma didn't ask know what. She just stood silently, her lips pressed tight. The way someone does when they know they've been caught, and any denial is pointless. The phone, the texts, the bank accounts. Brent, I said each word distinctly, not raising my voice, not angry, just listing items off a grocery list. Emma set her wine glass down, her hand trembling slightly. But instead of denying it, she sighed. I was going to tell you tomorrow. I was going to do things amicably. I let out a short laugh, devoid of any humor. Amicably? You had an amicable plan to leave with my brother-in-law, take my kids to Arizona, and leave me with an empty house and drained accounts. You weren't there, Logan, she choked out. You only had your work. You forgot who I was. Forgot how you used to love me. And that's a reason to betray me? With Brent? The man who sat at our dinner table every other week. He listened to me. Emma flared. He saw me, something you stopped doing a long time ago. I stood up. The scrape of the chair echoed in the silent cabin. I didn't want to argue. Didn't need to. Because words meant nothing now. Brent's on his way, isn't he? I asked. He's driving up here now? Emma didn't answer, but her eyes darted towards the window, an instinctive reflex. I nodded. Good. Let him come. Logan, please don't make a scene. For the kids. I stepped closer to her. Very close. Close enough to see the makeup starting to smudge at the corners of her eyes. You think I'm going to hit him? Shove him off the porch? No. I don't need to. She looked at me, confused. I have the evidence. The bank records. The texts. And I have testimony from my own daughter. What do you have left? The sound of a car pulling into the drive cut through the moment. I turned my head towards the window. SUV headlights swept across the porch, then died. I looked back at Emma one last time. Don't make me open the door. Emma moved quickly to the door. I heard it open, then Brent's voice. Familiar, harmless, the voice of the man I once considered a brother. But now, it was tight with tension. Logan knows everything, Emma whispered. He's prepared. I stood right in the doorway, my shadow stretching out onto the porch from the cabin light. Brent looked up, saw me, and his smile vanished instantly. Hey man, he said, trying to sound normal. Don't call me man, I replied. Brent took a step inside, but I held up a hand, blocking him. I don't need explanations. I just need you to know. Everything has been forwarded to my lawyer, and you should contact yours immediately. Brent glanced at Emma. Can we talk about this? Like adults. You think betrayal, lies, and stealing money from my family is how adults talk? Brent tightened his grip on the strap of his bag. I saw his hand shake. You won't be able to keep the kids, Logan, he said, his voice low. Courts favor the mother. You know the law. I gave a humorless smile. You forget something. The law has limits, and I'm not using it for revenge. I'm using it to protect Emily, Noah, the future you tried to steal. I turned to Emma. She said nothing, just stood there, looking like she'd just woken from a long dream. I don't need anyone leaving here tonight, I said, my voice low and steady. But tomorrow, things begin. Quietly, orderly, and exactly according to the plan I've laid out. Brent swallowed hard, then backed away, without another word. When the door closed, I stood alone in the cabin again. There was no smashing, no yelling, no one cried. But I knew a mirror had shattered. No one heard it break, because it was inside my chest, and it would never be whole again. The drive back from the cabin was unlike any we'd ever taken. Instead of laughter, guessing games, or stopping roadside for photos, This time there was a silence so heavy it felt hard to breathe. Emily sat beside me, head leaning against the window, eyes looking far away, but her small hand kept a light grip on mine, as if afraid everything would fall apart if she let go. Noah sat in the back, headphones on, but I knew no music was playing. Sometimes I caught his reflection in the mirror, distant, utterly confused. He'd witnessed the confrontation the night before, despite my efforts to shield him. Brent wasn't just some stranger. He was his uncle. And Emma, the mother who used to read to him every night, was now the main character in a nightmare I was forced to let him face. When we reached the quiet neighborhood south of Denver, where our little red-tiled roof house sat nestled among maple trees just starting to turn, I pulled into the driveway. The front porch still held traces of summer. The pot of hydrangeas Emily planted in June, Noah's grass-stained cleats kicked onto the step, and Emma's bicycle, the bike I now didn't know what to do with. I opened my door, turned back to the kids. Go on inside. Rest up a bit. I'll ask Uncle Leo to come by this afternoon. Emily managed a small smile, while Noah just gave a slight nod, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and walked into the house without a word. I stayed in the truck for a few minutes. Not because I was tired, but because I knew, the moment I walked through that door, I wouldn't be the man of family dinners, camping trips, or weekend gardening anymore. I was a man walking into a war. One without guns, but the casualties could be just as devastating. I called Ben Wells. Ben was my lawyer, but also an old army buddy, the guy who stood with me in the freezing Kosovo night, shoulder to shoulder in a trench. Now he was my trusted legal partner in investments in real estate. Logan, Ben's voice came through the phone, deep and decisive as always. I'm here. I need to see you. Urgent. I have every reason to believe my wife and Brent Wallace, the perfect brother-in-law, are planning to drain our family assets, including the kids' college funds. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 3 seconds. Well, Ben said. So, it's time. I drove straight to his office. The gleaming glass building on 8th Avenue, 11th floor, a place I'd been many times, but never with a heart this heavy. Ben met me with calm eyes and a firm handshake. I heard a few things from Diana, he said as we sat down. But I want to hear it directly from you. I laid it all out. The cabin, the secret phone, the plan to leave with the kids, the suspicious transfers, the confrontation, and the preparations I'd made. Ben didn't interrupt, didn't comment, just took notes, occasionally looking up with a confirming glance. You have the messages? Ben asked. Sent everything to Diana. She's tracking Brent too, and the joint assets. Checked this morning. Some has been withdrawn, but not enough to break the bank yet. Give it another week though, and I believe the accounts would be cleaned out. Ben nodded, pulled a file from his drawer. We start here, he said, his voice no longer just a friend's. It was the voice of a man stepping onto familiar battlefield turf. I'll file an emergency motion with family court, requesting a freeze on all joint assets due to risk of dissipation, and also requesting temporary sole custody of the children based on the risk of parental kidnapping by their mother. I clenched my fists. For the first time since this started, I felt something like control returning to my grasp. Ben continued, his tone steady. We'll also open a temporary file regarding business ownership, as some of your company accounts are tied to family expenses. I'll have someone audit all recent transactions. If Brent is involved, and I believe he is, we'll trace it to the root. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Each of Ben's words was like a hammer blow on the cracked concrete. But this time, not to break, but to rebuild. At the end of the meeting, Ben looked at me for a long moment. Are you ready for this, Logan? Not just the paperwork and the legal battles, but the sleepless nights, the skeptical looks from relatives, and most importantly, the hurt inflicted by the very people you once loved most. I nodded. You know me, Ben. I've walked through places no one wants to go. But no place ever scared me like hearing my daughter whisper that her mom was hiding something. Ben pressed his lips together, then gave a slow nod. Then let's begin. I won't let you fight this alone. I got home close to evening. Emily was in the living room, organizing books in her backpack for the return to school. Noah was making himself a grilled cheese in the kitchen. The house felt peaceful, but I knew it was just the calm before the storm. I knelt beside Emily, asking gently, You okay, princess? She nodded. Everything's okay. But Daddy, she whispered, if Mom doesn't come back, is that okay? I squeezed her hand lightly. I don't know what your mom will do, but I promise you'll never lose what matters most. What's that? Family. And the truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, looking out the window where the streetlights cast long shadows across the desk. In the distance, cars passed occasionally, and the city carried on. But for me, A war had truly begun, not for revenge, but to keep the most whole parts of what was broken. The Morning Brew coffee shop sits on the corner of 8th and Lexington, right in the middle of Denver's bustling business district. I chose it not for the coffee, which was actually pretty bad, but for the location. Lots of windows, open space, always busy. No better place to do something I never thought I'd do. Confront the woman who was once my wife, but was now part of a plan to take everything. I arrived 15 minutes early, took a table against the wall, my back to the interior so I could watch the entrance. No suit, no tie, just a light gray button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up, and a steaming Americano. I wanted to look normal, like a father catching a break midday to think about his kids. No one needed to know today's every move was scripted. A server walked by, smiled, asked if I needed anything else. I shook my head, smiled politely back. My eyes stayed on the door. At exactly 11:30, Emma walked in. She wore a classic navy blue dress. Not her usual style, more like the kind of outfit a woman wears when she wants to project responsible mother for the court. Her hair was pulled back neatly, makeup light but careful. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, like a wary animal. I raised my hand. She saw me, walked towards the table, carrying a large tote bag and a file folder. Everything was exactly as predicted. "Logan," she said, her voice quiet but tight. I stood up. "Emma, have a seat." We sat across from each other. No longer husband and wife. Not even friends. Just two people negotiating a collapse. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said. "I think we need to talk civilly." "I think so too," I replied. "For the kids." Emma took a deep breath. "I don't want to take this to court, Logan. It's not good for anyone. I just want you to reconsider what you're doing." I tilted my head. "What am I doing?" "Freezing the accounts. Filing for emergency custody. Giving information to a private investigator. That's not like you." "No?" I asked, my voice still even. "I think this is what's left of me after what you did." Emma pressed her lips together, then opened her bag, pulling out a stack of papers. "I've spoken to my lawyer. They advised me to negotiate rather than fight. Here's the proposal. You keep the house. I keep the rest. The accounts will be divided based on contribution. As for the kids, we share custody. I'll have them 2 weeks a month. You the other 2. I looked at the folder, but didn't touch it. "And Noah and Emily? What do they think?" Emma looked up. "They're kids, Logan. They don't need to choose." "You're wrong," I said slowly. "They were forced to choose a long time ago. You just refused to see it." Her eyes flickered for a second, then she regained her composure. "You're making everything worse. And Brent, what do you want from him? To ruin his career? Destroy everything?" I raised an eyebrow. "He did that himself. With your help. He's a good person, Logan. He doesn't deserve to be ruined just because you're hurt." "Because I'm hurt," I repeated, feeling my blood heat up. "Emma, I'm the only one who didn't steal from our joint accounts, didn't lie to our children, didn't bring someone else into our home. And yet I'm the hurt one who's overreacting." I leaned towards her, lowering my voice. "You don't get it, do you? The pain isn't losing the money, or even losing you. It's looking into my daughter's eyes and knowing she kept this secret for 3 months because she didn't know if her dad was strong enough to hear it." Emma blinked. A crack appeared in her defensive wall. "Logan," I cut her off. "It's okay. I don't need your sympathy. I just need you to understand. Today, we are no longer partners. Everything from now on happens according to the law." I took a thin envelope from my shirt pocket, placed it on the table. "This is a copy of the lawsuit filed against Brent for misappropriation of assets and conspiracy to illegally withdraw funds from the company." Emma stared at it. "Are you really going to drag the whole family into this?" "I didn't drag anyone. You did that when you and Brent planned to use my name to open a shell company." The air between us was thick. People around us continued sipping coffee, typing on laptops, ordering almond milk. No one knew the two people in the corner booth were bringing each other to the final edge of a marriage. Emma leaned back, looking at me with exhausted eyes. "I thought we could end this civilly." "We could have," I said, "if you hadn't planned on using our kids as leverage." "I never." She started to argue, but I held up a hand. "You want to negotiate? Fine. Here's my offer." I took out another envelope, this one containing a document signed by my lawyer, proposing full custody for me until Emma completed an independent psychological evaluation. All funds taken from the education accounts must be fully repaid. She would have visitation rights, but supervised. And most importantly, any false accusations from her or Brent would be brought to light if they continued to be used as attacks. Emma looked at me as if seeing me clearly for the first time, no longer the forgiving, Vulnerable husband easily manipulated by tears. You planned all of this, she whispered. This whole meeting? Yes. I answered, my eyes locked on hers. Because this is the only time I'm allowing myself not to be reactive. In that moment, neither of us spoke. The bell over the door chimed. Spoons clinked against cups. The espresso machine hissed. It all faded into a distant soundtrack for our final dialogue. Emma picked up her file folder again. She didn't argue anymore. Didn't bargain. Just stood up, gathered her things, and before turning away, she said, her voice no longer sharp, no longer controlled. Emily is going to ask why her mom isn't there every night. What are you going to tell her? I looked at her. My voice calm to the point it surprised even me. I'll tell her. Her mom needs time to relearn how to love without conditions. Emma left. The table still held her untouched water glass, a crumpled napkin she'd twisted in her hand. I sat there for a few more minutes, then stood and walked out of the cafe. Across the street, Diana Frost sat in a silver SUV, pretending to read a newspaper. She tilted her head slightly when she saw me, her eyes confirming. Recording complete, evidence secured. I gave a slight nod. The midday breeze blew through my collar. The smell of coffee mixed with pine and exhaust fumes. I took a deep breath. No victory feels good. But some victories, even bitter ones, are necessary. And this time, I wasn't fighting for me. I was fighting for the kids who needed a place free of lies to grow up in. I used to think justice was something distant, held by lawyers, judges, people in robes speaking words you needed Google to understand. But then I realized justice starts with the truth. And sometimes, it just takes one person patient enough to follow that truth all the way to the end. The morning of the first hearing, I woke earlier than usual. The Denver sky was still a hazy gray, dew heavy on the front lawn. Emily whispered, asking if I'd be back by lunch. I gently smoothed her hair, told her dad would be back, and this time, he'd bring good news. I wore a light blue button-down shirt, no tie, nothing aggressive. I didn't want to look like a man seeking revenge. I wanted to look like a father, trying to hold on to what was right for his kids. Ben met me at the courthouse steps. He wore a dark suit, carrying a thick binder. Diana sent over a few more audio clips this morning, he said. She found a message thread Brent was hiding on his company phone. Stuff he thought no one could access. I nodded. We walked inside. Family court isn't like criminal court. No jury box, no gallery packed with spectators. But the tension was just as thick. Polished wooden benches, pale yellow light casting long shadows on the floor, making it feel like a stage where no one was laughing. Emma was already there, with her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman with brown hair, looking alert but slightly defensive. Emma didn't look at me. She kept her head down, reading documents. But I knew she felt every step I did closer. She knew she wasn't controlling the rhythm anymore. The judge was a man with salt and pepper hair, his voice deep and dry like old oak. He laid out the purpose of the hearing, reviewing the temporary request for custody and asset freezing. Everything according to plan. No surprises. But not easy. Emma's lawyer went first. She spoke in a soft but firm tone, painting her client as a devoted mother, highlighting Emma's struggle returning to her career after being a homemaker, insisting she had no intention of taking the children unlawfully, merely wanting a fresh start elsewhere after the marriage failed. I didn't object. I sat still, listening to every word. That was the strategy. Let them think I was weak, soft, emotional. Then Ben stood up, and for 15 minutes, he turned an emotional breakup into a legal indictment. He cited the unreasonable transactions from Emily and Noah's college funds, transferred to a newly formed company under Brent Wallace's name. He presented the audio recording where Emma told Brent, if Logan finds out, we just say it was a bad investment. He displayed the text messages between them on the screen. We'll tell Logan after the cabin trip, when everything's ready. I don't want to have to explain it to the kids. By then, the room was so quiet I could hear the faint scratch of the judge's pen on his notepad. Emma kept her head bowed. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something, but Emma didn't respond. Her face was pale. Ben continued, his voice slower now. Your Honor, my client is not asking for punishment. He is asking for protection, for his children, for the legitimate assets of his family, and for the truth. The judge nodded, then excused us to the hallway while he reviewed the materials. I walked out, leaned against the old wooden railing. Sunlight was finally piercing the frosted glass windows, throwing fractured patterns on the long corridor like thin slices of hope. Ben stood beside me, arms crossed. You did good, he said. Kept your cool. That's what separates you from them. I didn't say anything. I just thought about Emily, about Noah, and about the time I'd stayed silent for too long. 15 minutes later, we were called back in. The judge read his decision without preamble. Temporary sole legal and physical custody granted to me. All joint assets frozen. Emma granted supervised visitation only. And independent psychological evaluations ordered for both parties before any long-term decisions. I heard every word, like someone reciting an old prayer I already knew by heart. Emma showed no reaction. She just sat there, like someone waking from a long sleepwalk, unsure of the way back. Leaving the courthouse, I didn't speak to her. Didn't look back. I didn't need an apology. I just needed justice. Ben clapped me on the shoulder. "One more step," he said. "Now for Brent." Brent was arrested 2 days later. At his private office, the one where he thought only he knew the safe combination. But Diana knew. And now the feds knew too. I got a call from Vanessa, Brent's wife, Emma's sister, late that afternoon. "Logan, I know I have no right to call," she said, her voice choked. "But I don't know who else to talk to about this." "I'm listening," I replied. "I saw the transfer statements. The things Brent did. I had no idea. Do you believe me?" I sat silent for a moment, then answered softly, "I don't trust as easily as I used to. But I don't think you're like them." Vanessa was quiet, then said quickly, "If I can help in any way, I will. I'm willing to be a witness. For you. For Emily and Noah." I thanked her, then hung up. That evening, when I got home, Emily was drawing a picture with 3 people, me, her, and Noah. No mom, but no sadness either. Just a wide sky and a warm red sun behind the 3 figures. Noah was doing homework. I knocked on his door, asked if I could talk for a minute. He nodded. I sat on the edge of his bed. "Did you hear about today?" He nodded again. "And how do you feel about it?" Noah looked at me for a long time, then said, his voice slightly hoarse, "I think maybe now I really get how long you were quiet." I didn't say anything, because no words felt adequate. But Noah continued, "You did the right thing, Dad." I lowered my head, not from weariness, but because for the first time, I saw my son looking at me not as a failed father, but as something else. Justice, it turned out, wasn't a loud bang. It was the quiet whisper of a child. "You did the right thing, Dad." And I knew. I had finally crossed the last line between retaliation and protection. Now I just had one job left. Hold on to the truth until my children were old enough to understand why their father chose the harder path. I used to think letting go was the final act of a loser, the way people gave up the fight. But then, one day, I realized some things, if you keep clutching them tight, you're the one who ends up drowning. The week after the hearing, life in my house settled into a routine. Emily painted pictures full of sunshine and green grass. Noah started experimenting with cooking alongside me on weekends, though most of his chosen recipes involved excessive amounts of cheese. On the surface, things seemed to be returning to order. But I knew there was still something hanging in the air, a question mark no one dared to touch. And then, one Wednesday afternoon, I received a handwritten letter. Not from a lawyer, not from the court, from Emma. The envelope was cream-colored, the handwriting still familiar, rounded, slightly slanted, like it was written during long evenings at the old cabin. In the top right corner, no return address, just a single line. "Don't read unless you're ready." I left that letter on my desk for 3 days, unopened. Every time I thought about tearing through the thin paper, I asked myself, what was I waiting for? An apology? An explanation? Or a chance to convince myself that what I'd gone through wasn't really that bad? But then, on Sunday morning, while cleaning out the garage with Noah, I found an old wooden box. Inside were mementos from our early marriage, the first movie ticket stub, a hand-drawn sketch of the house I planned to build for Emma, the first birthday card she wrote me in purple ink. I knew it was time to read the letter. I went back to my study, closed the door. Outside, the kids had music playing, their laughter echoing in rhythm. Part of me wanted to hold on to that sound like a soft blanket against the cold wind I knew was coming. I opened the letter. 1 page, not long. No excuses, no tears spilled onto the paper. Just Emma, speaking as if she'd finally shed every role she'd ever played. "Logan, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to reply. I just couldn't let it all end with the sound of a gavel and lawyers' signatures. There's one thing I always carried with me, even when I was wrong. It was the feeling that you once loved me with everything you had. And that's what makes me feel so small now. I have nothing left to defend, except the truth. I fell for Brent not because you were lacking anything, but because I had lost myself. And you couldn't save me, because I didn't want to be saved. Now, I only ask one thing of you. Let the children grow up with the stability I didn't have. Don't turn my mistakes into ghosts that haunt their childhood. Let me be a memory, not a burden. If you still hold on to anything, Anger, disappointment, or pain. Please keep it. Don't let it fall into Emily's or Noah's hands. This letter doesn't need a response. I know, some doors, once closed, are best left that way. I folded the letter slowly. No tears. No trembling. Just a space, quiet like the forest after rain, opening up inside me. For the first time since this started, I felt my heart wasn't pounding with anger anymore, but with something like regret. Not regret for losing her, but regret that we both had a chance to hold on to something better and couldn't. I didn't write back. I didn't call. I just walked out of the study, found the corner cabinet where I kept old things, and placed the letter inside, among the old memories, alongside the purple birthday card from years ago. Not to remember, but to close the chapter. That evening, Emily asked me, "Daddy, did Mom call?" I sat down beside her, looking into those big, round eyes, holding a tiny flicker of hope I didn't dare break. "No, sweetheart," I said, "but she sent a letter, and she wants you to grow up happy, to draw, and learn, and live without worrying about anything." Emily nodded, as if that was enough for her. Noah didn't ask. But the next day, I saw him cleaning his room, getting rid of old things connected to Brent, a baseball cap, a pair of sunglasses he'd been given. He didn't say anything, just worked silently. But I knew it was his way of choosing to let go. I learned something. Not everyone who leaves is the enemy. Some people leave because they don't have the strength to stay. And forgiveness isn't about erasing the wrong. It's about deciding not to let that wrong control the rest of your life. The following week, I called Diana, told her to stop all surveillance related to Emma. I didn't need to know where she was, who she saw, or what she did. What I needed to know, I already knew. What I needed to keep was right here in this house. Every time I saw Emily laugh or felt Noah casually put a hand on my shoulder as he walked past. One late afternoon, I took the kids to a new plot of land, a place where I planned to build a smaller house. Not too big, not fancy, but with enough room for a maple tree out back, a drawing studio for Emily, and an open kitchen where Noah could practice his culinary skills. "We're going to start over here," I said. Emily jumped up, letting out a little squeal. Noah just smiled, a light in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. I looked at my two children standing on the red earth and knew I hadn't won by retaliating. I'd won by holding on to what was most precious after everything broke. I hadn't answered the letter, but I had done exactly what she asked. I left Emma behind. No hate, no regret, just not carrying it anymore. March in Denver always arrives with a surprising chill, like winter isn't ready to leave, but spring can't wait any longer. Wind whips through the bare branches, carrying the scent of damp earth and freshly cut lumber. I stood on the unfinished lot, where a few wooden stakes marked the outline, the concrete foundation still dark and wet, sketching the beginning of something entirely new. Noah held the blueprints, trying to make sense of the electrical schematic. Emily ran circles around a shallow trench waiting for cement, clutching a stuffed rabbit so old you could barely tell its original color. I crouched beside a rebar frame, adjusting the steel rods, making sure they were straight. The hammer in my hand tapped lightly against the metal, not hard, but steady, like the way I was learning to be a father, again, from scratch. People say starting over is for failures. I don't think so. To me, starting over is the hardest choice, because it forces you to admit the first time didn't go as planned. And then, you still have to find the courage to believe in a second chance. Emily stopped running, came over to me. "Daddy, is this where my art room will be?" She pointed to the corner on the left side of the plot. I nodded, smiling. "That's right. With a window looking out towards the pond back there. You'll be able to paint the morning light every day." She beamed, then tilted her head, looking serious. "But if it rains a lot, will it flood?" I understood immediately what she was asking. It wasn't just about water. It was about safety, security. I took her small hand, led her over to the edge of the half-finished foundation. Then I pointed down to the layers of rebar beneath, the drying concrete, the newly laid waterproof membrane. "See this? This is the foundation. When you build a house, this is the most important part. No one sees it once the house is up. But if it's strong, then no matter how hard the wind blows or how much rain falls, the whole house stands firm. And this time, Dad's building that foundation himself for you and Noah." Emily looked at me for a moment, then smiled, still clutching her rabbit tightly. "So we won't fall down again, right, Dad?" I knelt and pulled her into a hug. "No, princess. We won't fall down again." That afternoon, I took the kids over to Leo's house. He'd become the closest thing to family I had left, not just because of our shared past in the service, but because of the way he stepped into the wreckage of my life without needing an invitation. We grilled burgers in his backyard while the kids played basketball. The late afternoon sun slanted through the trees, making everything look like an old home movie, warm, real, and deeply peaceful. Noah came over and sat beside me while I flipped burgers on the grill. "Hey, Dad," he said, his eyes still following the ball. "Yeah, Emily seems a lot better. She's really smiling now. Not that fake kind like right after it happened." I nodded, setting the tongs down, wiping my hands on a towel. "You too," Noah shrugged. "I think. Maybe it's because of you. You didn't force it. You just kept things steady." I looked at him. His gaze seemed much older than 14. "It wasn't easy, Noah. There were nights I just wanted to scream. Mornings I couldn't look in the mirror. But I knew, if I fell apart, you two wouldn't have anything solid to hold on to." He was quiet for a moment, then said slowly, "I used to be angry at you. Thought you were the reason Mom left. But now I get it. You kept this family from shattering." I turned to look at him, trying to swallow the lump rising in my throat. There are words you wait a lifetime to hear from your children. And when they come, they make every scar suddenly feel worthwhile. That evening, back home, I tucked Emily in, reading her a passage from a children's book about migrating birds and how they find their way back home after winter. Emily asked, "What if a bird forgets the way home?" I smiled, pulling the blanket up around her. "It learns to build a new nest. And if it's patient, that nest can be even stronger than the old one." Emily nodded, her eyes slowly closing. I stood up, turned off the nightlight. Outside, the wind picked up slightly. Branches tapped gently against the window, a steady rhythm, not loud, not scary. Just a reminder that life outside carried on. I went downstairs, sat in the living room again. Beside me were the new blueprints, a lukewarm cup of tea, and a silence that no longer felt lonely. I thought about Emma, not with anger anymore, but like a closed chapter. She was part of my life story, but not a part one needed to carry into the future. I thought about Brent. The lawsuit was ongoing, but I'd handed it over to the legal system. I refused to let hatred steal another second I could spend with my kids. And I thought about myself, a father, a builder, a man who had fallen, but gotten back up, not to retaliate, but to rebuild the foundation for a house, for a family, and for a life where I could look my children straight in the eye and say, "Dad didn't give up." The kitchen light reflected on the wooden table, creating a soft gleam. I quietly picked up the blueprints, made a mark with a red pen. In the left corner, I added a note. "Reading Nook, add outlet for Emily." Tomorrow, I'd take the kids back to the lot. We'd keep building, keep drawing the future. With our own hands, with our own hearts, no one else. And I knew there might still be winds. There might still be cold nights. But this foundation, it's never going to crumble again.